Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for April 1st, 2025. As a quick heads up, I know it's April Fool's, but I'm not going to be doing any April Fool's jokes on here. I did consider photoshopping myself standing in front of a temple and putting it as my Facebook profile picture, but that is as far as I will go. The news that we're going to talk about today is real, as far as I know. With that being said, we will start off with some news from Daily Mail that says 2 young elders from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were shocked to hear that a major FBI bust went down in the Virginia suburb where they were preaching. The 2 teenagers from the Salt Lake City area were out on a mission trip in Woodbridge, Virginia to minister to those who would listen about Mormonism. Elder Ford and Elder Collings have lived in Northern Virginia for months, and they have been tasked with converting locals and spreading information on their religion. Originally, they approached Daily Mail to speak about the LDS Church, but soon the conversation revolved around the news of the day, the FBI arresting a high-profile cartel leader just minutes away. While out ministering, the young men were not allowed access to the internet, they revealed, adding they hadn't heard the shocking news. According to the FBI, a top MS-13 cartel leader, Henry Santos, 24, who was originally from El Salvador, had infiltrated the neighborhood, which is just a 30-minute drive from the White House. Santos was one of the cartel's top 3 U.S.-based operatives. The Mormons, who had spent their day walking around local streets unaware of the gang activity in the area, were floored by the news. "It's super crazy that he was here in Woodbridge," Elder Collings told Daily Mail. "I didn't think this is that much of a crazy place." Collings shared that the neighborhood appears low-key, and the fact that a top suspected drug trafficker lived there is a shocker to hear. "I think that's super cool that they were able to get him and be able to put him in jail," he told DailyMail.com. "It's super good that we're able to be safe here now that he's no longer out on the streets just doing bad things to people." His evangelical partner, Elder Ford, who was also stunned, agreed. "That's good to have him behind bars where he belongs," Ford told Daily Mail, admitting, "I worry about safety a lot of times. Every morning we wake up and we pray for safety, so just knowing that this world is a little bit safer because of the police force and things like that, things that they've done to help protect us and makes us feel safe, makes us feel happy." This article highlights the issue of missionary safety. Until reading it, I hadn't put 2 and 2 together that missionaries are less safe because they don't have access to news about current events. I suspect their mission presidents warn them of some things, natural disasters maybe, but these teenagers are not given much more than that. They are trained to spread the lies of the Mormon Church restoration, but they are not trained to defend themselves against real danger. They likely believe that prayer and their garments will protect them from everything, from physical danger to illness. Let's watch a quick video from 2017 of a missionary fighting off an armed attacker in Brazil.
One man jumps off the motorcycle and starts talking to the missionaries, while his buddy on the bike appears to request something from the other 2, who then hand it over. Well, then this guy in the tank top walks to the other pair, perhaps checking a backpack, but when he turns back to the elders, boy, does he get a surprise. A short scuffle, and then stop it right there. Well, it looks like one of the missionaries gets the man's gun, points it at him, scuffles some more with bad guy number 2, and then tosses that gun over the fence.
There were 2 comments on this video that stood out to me. One said, "I live in Ecuador. Fighting back will greatly increase the likelihood you will get killed if the other person has a gun." Missionaries definitely don't belong in bigger cities here. The white shirt and dress pants puts a target on their back. If they continue to send them, they definitely need to keep them in safer neighborhoods and have them travel in at least a group of 4. Poverty creates desperation. And the other comment, "My brother served in Honduras and Guatemala. He is a redhead and the people there literally thought he was the devil. The men chased him through cane fields with their machetes. He had to hide out in a hut and boarded up for 3 weeks. Luckily, he's a tough dude. I'm not sure most people would want to stick around after that." And now let's read some more recent experiences from the Facebook group Missionary Mamas Worldwide. This one says, "My daughter told me some disturbing news and I don't know who I would contact. My daughter and her companion have had parasites this week, and though my daughter was on the mend, her companion had a fever of 105.2. She called the mission president to ask for them to drive to come and take them to a hospital, and the mission president's wife kept putting her off and just told her to wait it out." I thought 105.2 fever is serious and one should be taken right away to the hospital. Can't it cause internal damage being that high? I know I am not a doctor or a nurse, so I need guidance on how to help my daughter should that happen again, because it is a high probability in the area she is in. I really don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I don't want any long-term consequences for someone who is out serving the Lord at a young age either. And then there's this one. My son has just finished serving his 3rd week in Santiago, Chile. Week 1, pickpocket on the bus and lost his personal debit card and mission debit card. Neither have been replaced yet. He is living on his companion's card and the generosity of the ward. Week 2, was vomiting nonstop for 48 hours. Admitted to hospital for about 6 hours of rehydration and tests. He has epilepsy. Week 3, returning to apartment Saturday night with companion and robbed at gunpoint. Both lost their phones. Companion's watch was stolen. I think the church needs to do a better job of either protecting its missionaries or teaching them how to protect themselves. Now let's go to yahoo.com, where it says Jody Hildebrandt, a therapist who worked with YouTube vlogger Ruby Franke, is challenging her conviction, saying she didn't know her rights when she pled guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse in late 2023. Hildebrandt and Franke were both sentenced to up to 30 years in prison on child abuse charges after accepting plea deals. At the time, Hildebrandt's lawyer said she was not the person she was being portrayed as, but was accepting the consequences for her conduct. She had said one of the reasons she didn't want to go to trial was so the children didn't have to emotionally relive the experience. Now, Hildebrandt is calling her plea agreement unlawful, with documents saying it was unlawfully induced or not made knowingly and voluntarily, with understanding of the nature of the charge and the consequences of the plea. Hildebrandt filed a petition for relief on her own behalf last Monday, March 24th, writing, "I did not know my rights, and my attorney did not inform me of them." The petition listed several other claims, including that her counsel was ineffective and the prosecution failed to give adequate notice of the charges. Attorney Eric Clark told ABC News that they weren't expecting this from Jody, but I can't say that we're super surprised either. I'm super confident that the entry of her plea will hold up and that she won't be able to show that she knowingly, involuntarily didn't enter it. Franke and Hildebrandt will have their first parole hearing in December of 2026, approximately 3 years after they pled guilty to the charges. I have watched and read so many things about Jody, and there is nothing surprising to me about her doing this. She spent her life being in charge. She had the Mormon church referring people to her on a regular basis. She was meeting with very high-ranking Mormon leaders. She was convincing Mormon women that their husbands were addicts and that their children were filled with demons. She is used to having control, and she probably thinks she will get away with this too. Speaking of Mormons and therapy, let's read a little more about that. I want to start with this quote that sums up how I personally feel about therapy. Yes, normalize therapy, but also make therapy affordable, if not free. Far too many people turn away from therapy because visits with a therapist cost hundreds of dollars a visit. Mental health care should not be a luxury item. Now let's read this experience from the Facebook group Latter-day Saint Women and Healthy Sexuality. We got a new bishop recently who does things very differently than our past bishop. He decided that he will not have the ward pay for individual trauma therapy for both me and my husband, since members are turning to therapists instead of Christ. And because we got ourselves in this situation and need to make a plan to get out of it, which I agree with. Our insurance covers other counselors we can go to, but no one with the trauma training our therapist had, which is why we were going to her. Now without trauma therapy, my husband is in a bad place. His only hope was working through the trauma. Although our situation is not our bishop's doing, I feel so angry with him. I feel angry about how little he knows about mental health and the importance of getting help from qualified professionals, like the therapist we were going to. Or maybe he does know and disagrees. Either way, I'm going to talk to him about my feelings tomorrow and hopefully not blow up on him. I don't want to feel entitled to help from the ward, but perhaps my feelings show I do. I do expect him to at least show some empathy and compassion. There's no way my husband will get better without trauma therapy. I've felt like talking to our stake president about it before, but I haven't yet. Has anyone else been in a situation like this before? Please be sensitive. If I thought that she would receive this as a viable option, I would just tell her to stop paying tithing and use that money to pay for therapy. And now let's go to this related post from the ex-Mormon subreddit that says, "My true believing Mormon wife attended a Relief Society activity last night with a guest speaker who is a marriage and family therapist. This D-bag proceeded to tell these women that if their husbands were not willing to fully commit to the church, then they should reevaluate their relationships. True happiness only comes when both partners are committed to following the church. It isn't fair when one partner decides to up and leave the church." He then told them they needed to be willing to lay down an ultimatum and make their husbands choose them or their unrighteous beliefs. What a crock of S. Nobody can just ignore the crap they learned about the church and come back smiling like nothing ever happened. These idiots are just trying to drive a wedge deeper between the non-believers and their families. So much for a family-oriented church. My partner and I actually had a very positive experience with the therapist that we went to that the church paid for. Our experiences with bishops attempting to be therapists, though, were not good. Now let's go to some insight into what it's like to live in a shrinking church by looking at a post made 3 days ago on the Oakland Steak Facebook page. Please join us in a steak-wide fast this Sunday, March 31st. Sunday was the 30th, but I'm guessing that was just a mistake. We will fast to grow membership of our stake for people to move to the area, return to activity, and to meet with the missionaries. We'll continue to pray for peace, understanding, miracles, and hope in Christ. President Kimball said in our recent stake conference, "We have seen there is power when we align with one purpose." With how many members the church is losing, I do think it will continue to impact people's testimonies more and more. If this really is the one true church on the earth, why are people leaving? And why aren't more people joining? And now let's go to the LDS church-run Deseret News for this article. 1 year ago, Utah lawmakers unanimously enacted new religious liberty protections, bucking the national trend towards skepticism that's led some legislators to put religious freedom in scare quotes. SB 150, called the Exercise of Religion Amendments, created a state-level Religious Freedom Restoration Act that gives Utahns more power to challenge government actions that interfere with their religious beliefs. In a world that's increasingly hostile to religion, these amendments are an important expression of Utah's long-established commitment to religious freedom, said Representative Jordan Tesher, a Republican from South Jordan, the bill's House floor sponsor in February of 2024. SB 150 was signed into law the next month. 8 months after that, in November, it was cited in a case that's testing the limits of that long-established commitment by asking whether religious freedom protections extend to a new faith group using psychedelic mushrooms in its ceremonies. The faith group, Singularism, claims government officials in Provo, Utah and Utah County violated Utah's new Religious Freedom Restoration Act, among other laws, when they seized the group's psilocybin and scriptures in November. The officials, on the other hand, say Singularism is motivated by a desire to sell illegal drugs, not to practice and promote a religious faith. In late February, almost exactly 1 year after Tesher reflected on the value of robust religious freedom protections, a federal judge granted Singularism's request for a preliminary injunction, ruling that government officials in Utah cannot claim to support religious freedom if they prevent Singularism's practitioners from living according to their beliefs. For that guarantee of religious liberty to mean anything, the laws must protect unfamiliar religions equally with familiar ones, both in design and in practice, wrote District Court Judge Jill N. Parrish. The ruling caught the attention of religious freedom experts nationwide, who say the first of its kind Utah case raises familiar but still hotly debated questions about the purpose and scope of religious liberty laws. I love that this is happening in Utah, where the Mormon Church, that is constantly using religious liberty laws, has its headquarters. Today I saved the best for last. Ginger Price, who grew up Mormon in a tiny community on the Utah-Idaho border, wrote a book that I highly recommend reading. This is what the cover looks like. I can't read it out loud because my video will be flagged, but the title is My Dear R.A. The book is filled with heavy topics, but she expresses them so beautifully. It is formatted as letters to the person who hurt her, and through the letters, she describes quite poetically the way that Mormonism, her upbringing, her thought patterns, and her Mormon mission molded her into the perfect victim. I appreciate her candor. It might actually be one of the most vulnerable books I've ever read. Right now, I am almost exactly halfway through it, and just thinking about what I've read so far gives me chills. The book comes out today and will be available on Amazon and Kindle, and eventually Audible, where Ginger reads it in her voice. I would love to have a book club type discussion with anyone who reads it. Thank you, Ginger, for sharing your life with the world. And now let's finish up with this quote that says, if you are obedient and something good happens, God is rewarding you. If you're obedient and something bad happens, God is testing you. If you're disobedient and something good happens, God is biding his time. If you're disobedient and something bad happens, God is punishing you. There is no excuse for this way of thinking because it is abuse and manipulation. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.